friend.
The Jamaican. Yeah.
Let's circle back.
Jamaica. Yeah.
Let's circle back on that.
This guy is not one of these.
Mike McAllister joining us here on the show. A day later than normal, but we're glad to get you on this week. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
We're okay. Let's start with what we saw last night, right? Kind of an odd game, to say the least. Down by 32. They come back and cut it to 6 in the final minute and end up losing by 10. What stands out to you from that game last night?
To me, it felt like the game was lost at the end of the first half.
Yeah.
They really struggled offensively at the beginning of the game. North Carolina missed a few open shots, kind of kept the window open a little bit. And Syracuse clawed back and cut it to 5 with a couple minutes to go before halftime. And, I had the thought go through my mind that if they can keep it around here, 5 to 7 points, then you feel like you go into halftime feeling like you got a shot and maybe have a little momentum, given that you had outplayed them in the last several minutes. And then in the blink of an eye, it ballooned up to 14, 16 points, whatever it ended up being. And it felt like that was sort of the nail in the coffin. And then the second half just sort of continued that trend, as it felt like Syracuse's the wind was knocked out of their sails at that point. But, give them credit for continuing the fight. But I also think part of it is, North Carolina lets up a little bit when they have a lead that was as large as it was.
What do you make of the offense last night, Mike? The shot selection was brutal. You mentioned the 5-point deficit. Sadiq White took a horrible shot that basically led to the downfall there at the end of the first half.
It just didn't seem like the same offense that we saw against Notre Dame, right? They were sharing the ball much better. There was much more movement in that game. And this game sort of reverted back to what we had seen in previous games, where they have long stretches where they don't score, they don't shoot the ball very well. Just felt like they sort of reverted back to that. And I was hoping to see them come out and kind of continue the way they had played against Notre Dame, showing a lot of energy and a lot of movement on offense. Even if your shots aren't falling, at least if you're getting good shots, you can live with it. And you understand sometimes that can happen. But North Carolina came out and wasn't making a lot of shots either. The difference was Syracuse wasn't getting good shots. North Carolina was. North Carolina just wasn't making them, at least in the first few minutes of the game. Syracuse was not getting anything offensively. And I think it goes back to ball movement, to sharing the basketball, and, not being stagnant and running ISO all the time.
I want to defend myself a little bit. I'm not crushing Sadiq White for the bad shot. Everybody took I said the whole offense. Yeah. But it felt like
it was a big
one. When he made that shot, he attempted that shot, it kind of just rolled downhill from there. Like that started.
Yeah, they hit a 3 at the other end. It went to 9. Then there was the shot clock violation, went to 11. And then Donnie had a turnover. It went to 14. And that did seem to like it started the downfall, Mike.
Yeah, no question. And that can happen, right? When you you fight back and you get yourself within striking distance, and then you have a couple of bad plays and they can snowball on you. And when, they've lost 5 times in the last 6 games, the mental part of it starts to creep in too, right? When things start to not go your way, instead of being confident that you can fight back and figure out a way to stay in it and give yourself a shot to win, there's the here we go again mentality that is normal to creep up when you're going through a rough stretch. So I think that played a part in this as well. And I'm just not sure they have that one guy that when things aren't going well is really going to, get in everyone's faces and say, this is not acceptable. We're going to turn this around right now. I don't know that they have that guy, that vocal, fiery type of a guy. You don't have to have one of those on every team, but it certainly helps when you're going through rough stretches.
It's been a hot topic of discussion this week, the Donnie Freeman lineup change against Notre Dame. We haven't had you on since that happened, and I mean, we all know what happened, right? They sit him on the bench, they get back to that defensive intensity, they move the ball on offense, they played well against Notre Dame, and again, I know it's just Notre Dame, and then Donnie goes back in the starting lineup, presumably for the scoring punch. He gives them the scoring punch, but they just did not play the same way defensively or offensively in that game against North Carolina. What do you make of, I guess, the week that was for Donnie Freeman and how they kind of handled the situation?
Certainly took me by surprise when Red said after the game prior to that everything was on the table and they, could make some changes and alluded to that. The one I thought that they could make was potentially taking Nate George out of the lineup to either put in Kyan or put in a Tyler Betsy and maybe move JJ to the 1 or something like that. I didn't see a Donnie Freeman for Sadiq White swap, but the thing that I keep going back to once that happened was the comment that Red made after the game when they asked him why Sadiq White was in there, even with, picking up 4 quick fouls. And he said he was the only one trying and then walked it back. And so I'm wondering how much of it was rewarding Sadiq White for his effort and that being part of it. Also, if you take your best player out of the lineup, maybe that gets everyone's attention as, oh my goodness, maybe he really is serious about changing things up and trying to get a spark. Not entirely sure, still caught me off guard, but it makes you wonder do you stick with that lineup until you lose? And maybe you go into North Carolina with that lineup and, see what happens. And maybe they wouldn't have gotten off to as rough of a start as they did. Hard to tell. Hindsight's 20/20, obviously, but Donnie's going to play a lot of minutes either way. So,
yeah. The other thing I want to mention about the offense or ask you about is isn't it kind of like you're not exactly going up against a world beater defense when you're playing North Carolina either. Everybody thought they were going to have to score in the upwards of 80 points to beat them because so it's not like BC's even got a better statistical defense than they do. It was kind of weird to watch. It felt like a game where the up-tempo style was going to work to your favor and you still somehow just got bogged down.
Yeah, and again, I think that goes back to ball movement, but then the other side of it is you can't go up tempo as often when your defense isn't forcing turnovers and getting quick shots and then getting those rebounds, right? So Syracuse was dominated on the glass. They didn't play particularly great defense. They're not a good half-court offensive team, regardless of who the defense is. They're at their best offensively when they're able to use their defense to create transition opportunities and or rebound the basketball and turn those into fast break opportunities, get out in the open floor, take advantage of their speed and athleticism. That's really where Syracuse can get some easy buckets and put some points on the board. If you force Syracuse to play half-court offense consistently for 40 minutes, they're going to have stretches where they really struggle to score. And that's what happened at the beginning of that game against North Carolina. That's why North Carolina got out to a lead early and why Syracuse couldn't take advantage of some of the missed shots from the Tar Heels. That's just a reality of what this team is at this point.
Mike, it feels like the next 4 or 5 weeks don't quote unquote matter, right? In terms of NCAA tournament, that's a foregone conclusion. They're not getting in that large bid, and the next thing that truly matters is the ACC tournament. In that time, if we were to see Adrian, Autry, and the staff make a change or two, what would be at the top of your list to attempt to, even if it is an experimental thing or just a change they can make before the ACC tournament that might provide a little bit of a spark outside of sitting Donnie for a few minutes?
Yeah, I think maybe playing JJ at the 1 more and then bringing in either Kyan or Tyler Betsy into the starting lineup. I think that might give you a little bit more of an offensive spark. And, I know Kyan's had his issues on the defensive end. I recognize that. But it just seems like offensively they seem to be in more of a consistent flow when JJ is at the 1. My very amateur basketball mind's opinion. But that's one change I could see potentially happening as something that maybe could spark something. But otherwise, I mean, they are what they are. I saw some good things from Bryce Zephyr when he had to go in against Virginia Tech. So I don't know if that means you try to find some more minutes for him. Not 100% sure if that would lead to anything, but it's tough when you feel like you know who your best guys are and you know what your best rotations are, and it's just not working. So now you have to either make a change for the sake of making a change, or maybe you go do some deep dives into analytics and say, you know what, this wasn't something we were seeing with our naked eye, but JJ's better in the half court running the point, so let's give him some more opportunities to do that, or different types of things. That's something I could see them potentially taking a look at, or if I was running things, maybe something I would try a little bit.
You mentioned it earlier, and I said it. It's like, why not just go back to the Sadiq starts? You hung with Houston with that. You beat Tennessee with that. You played what looked like your most complete game against Notre Dame with it. Why not?
Yeah, it's a good point, and especially because of the energy. Whenever he's out there, I mean, he's giving you everything he has from an energy and an effort standpoint. I don't recall a game this year where I've thought, Sadiq wasn't going all out on every single play. And so maybe that energy to start a game can just be infectious and can help them start a little bit better than what they have, because it seems like during this losing streak that's been an issue. The start of the first half, start of the second half is it just takes them a little bit to kind of get into things. Maybe if you throw Sadiq out there to start the game, because of the energy he's giving, that can sort of be contagious a little bit and let other guys start to pick up on that and pick up their energy a little bit. And then you keep that up for longer stretches than what has been there in the last handful of games. That's certainly something I would take a look at. And maybe given the fact that when you started him recently against an ACC level opponent, it worked. When you didn't, it didn't. Maybe you just use that and see what happens either at Virginia or for the 2 home games following that.
Let me ask you another question. Do you think this is people seem to think this is a shot at Donnie Freeman, that Sadiq would start him? I still tend to think he's going to get his 35 minutes even if he doesn't start. But I also think this is a positive sign for Donnie Freeman, that he's the one guy I think on the team that would say, yeah, I will do this if we're going to win. I have a feeling it would ruin other players, and I think he's just the guy that can handle it.
Well, I think the proof is that he did handle it, right? He played well in the second half against Notre Dame. And then in the first half against North Carolina, right after he gets taken out of the starting lineup and then gets put back in, and he had a really strong first half against the Tar Heels and kind of kept Syracuse afloat for a while. So, from a mental standpoint, you're right. There's a lot of players that couldn't handle that. He certainly seems to have been able to. And so if you sit him down and just have that frank conversation with him and say, look, you're still going to get 30-plus minutes a game. That's not changing. But we got to do something to try to change up how this thing is going. And when we had Sadiq out there, when you were hurt, he gave us a lot of energy right from the start. It worked against Notre Dame. We're going to try it again for a few games and see what the results are. And if nothing ends up changing, then maybe we'll go back to putting you in the starting lineup. But just, have that conversation with him, and you hope that the relationship between him and the coaching staff is strong enough that they can have those conversations and, all be on the same page moving forward with it.
All right, Mike, anything else before we let you go? Either women's basketball, men's lacrosse, they both played on Sunday. Anything else you want to touch on before we part ways today?
I'll just say this about women's basketball. For every Syracuse basketball fan that's frustrated with the way that this season has gone for the men's team, it's gone the opposite for the women's team. They're really good. They're fun to watch. They play with a ton of energy. They're really good defensively, very physical team. They kind of embody Felicia Leggett-Jack's personality in the way that they play. I would encourage fans to go watch them, to go to games and to check them out, because they're a lot of fun to watch, and they're very talented and they're really good. And if they want to keep some of these young players, they're going to need all the support that they can, because you got the player that's probably going to be the ACC Rookie of the Year in Uche, and it's going to be tough to keep her. There's no doubt. She's probably going to get some lucrative offers to go to some big programs. So anything that fans can do to support the program, to help give them the resources necessary to try to keep that core intact, I think would be beneficial to that program, not only this year, but in the foreseeable future.
All right, Mike, as always, we appreciate the time. We appreciate the insights. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll talk to you again on Monday.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, our good friend Mike